In 1936, Jacques Yves Cousteau made a discovery that would forever change his life. He set foot into the water of the Mediterranean Sea wearing a pair of goggles. At that time, wearing goggles was not common with swimmers, but after seeing some pearl divers wearing them many years earlier, he wondered what the purpose was. He thought that maybe the goggles kept the salt water from getting in your eyes. So grabbing a pair of aviator goggles, he plunged into the ocean and was amazed. The goggles didn't just keep the water out of his eyes, they also made everything underwater so vivid. He could see color and movement. It was like a jungle to him. That day, Jacques Yves Cousteau's life began. And from that day on, he swore he would construct devices that would bring him back to that world.
Now the old king is dead, long live the king. 1 minute I held the key. Next the walls were closed on me, and I discovered that my castle stand upon pillars of salt and pillars of sand. I hear Jerusalem bells are ringing, Roman cavalry choirs are singing. Mirror, mirror, my sword and shield, my missionaries in a foreign field. For some reason I can't explain. Once you go, there was
Jacques Cousteau was born on June 11, 1910 in France. He learned to swim at a young age, but he wasn't allowed to very often because he was a very sickly child. Later, Jacques' family was told that exercise would be good for his health and help build his immune system. Jacques loved to swim, so this was really exciting news for him. He also loved machines and would take things apart and put them back together again. He became bored with school and started causing trouble, and was expelled from high school. After that, he was sent to the strictest boarding schools in France. He graduated in 1929. In 1930, Jacques Cousteau joined the French Naval Academy seeking adventure. In his third year of training, he traveled around the world filming the whole thing. Later, he committed himself to becoming a Navy flyer. But a horrible car accident in 1936 ended his career, and he had to find a new job as an artillery instructor. One year, Jacques and his friends wanted to experiment with oxygen so they could stay underwater longer. Jacques had found out that oxygen became toxic at a great depth, but no one knew the exact depth. So he and his friends set out to experiment. Jacques dived underwater with a gas mask, an inner tube, and a bottle of oxygen. Less than 1 minute later, Jacques suffered a seizure but kept control long enough to take off his weight belt. His friends pulled his lifeless body back onto the boat, where he later recovered. He reconstructed his diving device and tried again. This time he made it to 45 feet before he had another seizure and went unconscious. After that, Jacques lost all interest in oxygen. Not wanting to give up completely, Jacques and his friends decided they would try compressed air. There were already devices that could pump large amounts of air into a small tank, but when it was released, it was all released in one big bubble. Jacques wanted to create a valve that would control the flow of air on its own. He needed it to be self-regulating. In 1942, Jacques met up with a man who had made a device that was self-regulating. But this device was meant to be used for fueling cars, so Jacques and Gagnon adapted their device to work in water. But when Jacques tested it, it didn't work. So the two men went back to the drawing board to see what went wrong. 2 weeks later, they had invented the aqualung.
A year after World War II, Jacques Cousteau and other officers of the French Navy prepare to test early experimental models of the aqualung in the waters of Véron near Marseille. Amid a school of damselfish, the divers enter a watery universe filled with constellations of life. Here, the tuna-like lichia. There, a ray drifts along the bottom. The meru, or rock bass, timid yet perpetually curious. Dorado and Corvina Negra, common to the Mediterranean coast, roam the shoreline. Everywhere, in endless variation, the sea teems with hunters and hunted. Aliens in this unfamiliar world, the divers nonetheless are quickly accepted as members of the underwater community. They create little stir among the schools of fish, moving slowly like tourists in a crowded gallery through the caverns of the sea.
November 21st, 1951, launched the first expedition of Jacques Cousteau's floating research ship. During the war, Calypso was used to find floating mines, and Jacques remodeled this into a state-of-the-art research vessel. He used many ways of financing the project, including a philanthropist and even selling some of his wife's antique jewelry. He sailed off toward the Mediterranean Red Sea, and because he had no formal scientific training, he took along a crew of experts in ocean biology, geology, and hydrology. They filmed everything they saw, and by the end of the expedition, the group had gathered an impressive amount of new information on the Red Sea. With this new information in hand, Jacques headed to the U.S. to publicize Calypso's mission and to raise money. He met with the president of the National Geographic Society and the CBS network to persuade them to sponsor his films. That fall, the National Geographic Society offered to sponsor Jacques' next mission, and this began a long, successful relationship between Jacques Cousteau and National Geographic. On June 15, 1997, at the age of 87, Jacques Yves Cousteau died. Around the world, devoted fans, environmentalists, and world leaders mourned the death of Jacques Cousteau. His family and friends also held a private memorial ceremony underwater where he spent most of his life. In his words, these are Jacques Cousteau's last thoughts and wishes.
The invention of the aqualung and my passion for moving pictures have allowed me to reveal to the world the fragile symphony of inner space. Out of curiosity, I listened and understood the many forms of water. I listened to the bubblings of nascent brooks and to the deafening embrace of rivers meeting with oceans. I witnessed the last throes of dying shores, and finally I pricked up my ears to the water people, my brothers. I understood that water and life were indissolubly bound, and that I must spend my own career fighting to protect that life and to safeguard future generations. Tomorrow I will demand that the rights of generations to come be written in the duties of the living ones. If by such enterprises that make it possible for our children and our children not yet born to live with dignity in a world symphony, I will have fulfilled my mission.